Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Villains aren't hard. Interesting villains are hard. You want a boss for the end of your fight in a role-playing game. Okay. You've gone through the mooks, you've gone through the lieutenants. Now, how do you make a boss? How do you make a boss that is different from all the other bosses? Because ultimately, the boss's job is to last a little while and to genuinely threaten the player characters. You want there to be a fear that they could die. The higher you get in level or capability your player characters, the harder this is to achieve, because frankly, player characters are pretty dangerous people. My friend Vic is fond of pointing out that, most of even the biggest monsters in Dungeons & Dragons will go down in 5 turns to a properly trained and balanced party. It's not that far off. If you handle things correctly, things are balanced towards the player characters winning. At least these days. So the glory days when your player characters might not even survive character generation. That last fight has to be a something. If that is why the villain, that boss, is interesting. Lots of hit points, much tougher than the rest, does a lot more damage. There's so many ways to do that. And that gets super boring over the course of a campaign. In my victory system, there are special abilities. You got magic, martial arts, mechanica, power, psionics, and you can switch them up. Oh, this is the cyborg bad guy. He's really tough and hits really hard. This is a magic bad guy. He can magically make himself really tough and magically hit you really hard. This is my psionic bad guy. He can psionically make himself really tough and psionically hit you very hard. That's a super easy trap to fall into because it gets to be a numbers game and you look for that combat every session. You got to roll dice and threaten to lose hit points, and I mean, that's exciting. Every role-playing game has a good section of its rules devoted to combat. It's a complex system. It's the closest most games get to simulation, and it's fun and exciting. People optimize their characters so at least they're not helpless in combat, usually. How do you switch that up? How do you make that villain something different? Well, you can change what kind of a threat they represent to the player characters and to the world that they're in. Definition of a villain is the character whose evil motivations and actions drive the plot. Doesn't mean that they're out there being single-handedly a murder person. Kung fu movies and even science fiction films, you look for that fight at the end. But what if that's not what it's really all about? What if that fight at the end is a diversion, or it's window dressing? What if something else has been going on all along and you had no idea? I mentioned a psionic bad guy. And yeah, telekinetic barriers and throwing beams of telekinetic force and smacking people around. Now, what about the psionic bad guy who makes you forget why you were fighting him in the first place? What if you had that ability to make a suggestion? You see very few Sith Lords do the Jedi mind trick. It's called the Jedi mind trick because you see good characters using it. You don't need to see our identification. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Why are you fighting me? I introduced you to your wife. Remember that time your daughter died? You're really my best friend. You'd like to attack the person next to you. Now you have something a little more inherently dangerous and something that isn't a traditional threat. There's a guy in that party who can't be hurt. I mean, he's tanked all the way to the gills. He's got the high armor class or the super amount of armor shrugs. He's got a massive damage resistance, and he expects himself to stand in the middle of the room and take damage and do that one-shot punch that takes everyone out. And it'd suck if that guy got mind controlled, wouldn't it? You'd like to attack your friends. Because a lot of times when you spec for a heavy physical combat, you get a little squishy up here. Oh, please use that. Make people remember that mental durability is a thing, and that if you've got a game world where you have people who might potentially be able to control your brain, one of those guys is going to be out there. He's going to hate your balls, and he's going to try and get you to stick your fist all the way through one of your buddies. That adds drama. That adds a certain amount of pathos. That adds a cautionary tale, not to spec entirely for physical combat. Are you crazy? And it brings about that whole, he's going to have to do something really special to you to hurt you at all, which is going to vaporize the rest of us. Are you sure you want to spec that high? A villain who can travel in time. Kind of terrifying. You run into a room with a guy that you're pretty sure you want to kill, and then all of a sudden, that's your dad. Oh, you people are here to kill me? Just a moment. I'll be right back. Son, how's it going? Pity about your mother, but these things happen. I'm here for you, though. Could you kill these people, please? Turning player characters perfectly acceptable. People get upset if you do it too much, but you save it for the boss. You have a bunch of physical combat, and then suddenly you throw this. It does a couple of things. This can get real dagger in the heart twisty, too. One, you turn that player character against the other player characters, and you realize that's terrifying, that's horrible, but then you find out he's been mind controlling his minions, too. That assassin on the first floor that you just walked through because you didn't think it was a problem. Yeah, that was a mother of two yesterday, and this guy just decided, well, with all these adventurers coming, I might as well turn this person into my minion for a day or so. Not like he's going to last. And then you've got the blood of more or less innocent people on the hands of the player characters, and most player characters are going to be worried about that or have some kind of a psychological break or have to do some soul searching, unless they're the other kind of player characters who just kind of high-five each other and go, dude, mother to you. That's like killing 3 people. Score, experience. Player characters are vulnerable in more than just their physical form. Their equipment, their armor, all of that leads to them having certain amounts of durability and the ability to stand up to any physical thing you throw at them. That's, that occurs in the literature. That is a perfectly viable character type, but characters are still vulnerable somehow, some way. You have a character that has no flaws and no vulnerabilities whatsoever. Well, one, that's boring. Two, why are you out adventuring? You could be robbing banks and having no problems. It's not like anyone could stop you. And my favorite solution to the tank that absolutely cannot be hurt is to drop them in wet cement and let it harden. No, I can teleport out of that. Then there's just, then here's some dice. I'm going to go watch TV. You tell me when all the bad guys are dead. There's a way. And your ideal villain is there to exploit their every weakness. The pit of wet cement or industrial epoxy that's going to harden very quickly into resin when you introduce another binary agent is perfectly acceptable. I cannot possibly be hurt. Okay, I'm going to seal you in a 2-ton block of resin and you can sit at the bottom of the ocean. Let's see how you handle that. Oh, it can probably be dealt with, and there's other player characters. You can get them out of that situation, but you have to remind them, yeah, you can have problems. I had a character named the Sponge, and it's a low-level victory system superhero game. Josh ran that. Really good game. The Sponge was more or less immune to harm. Some dermal plating and biolamination. He halved all damage coming in, and then had a big damage resistance on top of that. So he didn't have any other abilities, not starting out, but he really couldn't be hurt. He couldn't hurt people either. He wasn't strong as a result of being super tough. He was just really durable. And the Sponge, he could soak damage all day long. He lost a lot of clothes, and he was kind of poor. So he constantly have to cover his junk and go running to the Salvation Army every time he got out of a fight because, well, he's naked again. As tough as that character was, mind control, use them against other player characters. Yeah, that happened. Or bury him under under a ton of dirt. Yeah, that took a long time for him to get out of. He wasn't happy when he did. You can still affect that character. You can still hinder that character. You can mentally harm that character. And that's kind of what made it functional. Because physical damage is overrated. Killing PCs means the pain is over, and that's not a game master's job. Okay, the game master's job isn't to kill PCs or necessarily to put them in pain. Your job as a game master is to threaten them. And the threat of being forced to do something they absolutely do not want to do by someone who can mind control them, kind of awful. The threat of having their past altered beyond their ability to control it, that's kind of awful. The threat of being imprisoned in a way that they do not have the ability to get out of, that's a serious threat. If you're making those players sweat the fate of their character, you're doing your job right. That can be physical damage, but sure, threaten that a few times. But when it comes to that big bad, when it comes to the bad guy that they have been chasing all along, well, why? What's he doing? He's not just sitting there in the tower screaming, "I'm evil, come fight me." He's been doing stuff. What? Altering time, taking control of members of government, and twisting it to his whim. That would explain an awful lot, actually. Why is the bad guy there? Why does that make him dangerous? Work backwards. Go to that last fight in your head and go, what am I going to do to threaten these player characters? And once you have a character who can do that, Now, how is he using that to be a threat? How has he amassed minions and the resources to do this? How has he amassed what allows him to have this headquarters that people have to break into? There's a certain tendency to use a video game model on role-playing games. You have the place you got to break into, and there's the minions you got to fight past, and lieutenants that are big, and then you have the boss fight. It's not a bad model. There's a million variations on it, most of which were made into movies in the 80s. And you work it backwards from a villain who has an unusual edge over the player characters. You would lend that unusual edge to the entire game and that air of menace. How many times have you thrown a situation in front of your player characters and they just kind of, okay, we got this thing, let's go get them? What if that wasn't the case? What if everyone sat around for a minute going, damn, that's going to be tough. Tension, suspense, threat, menace. It doesn't mean your player characters can't beat this guy, that there isn't a way to deal with those advantages that he has. It means they're going to have to work for it. At the end of the adventure, it's called getting experience, not getting, oh, we made it by again. And experience comes through adversity. It comes through having to work for it. It comes through overcoming things that are difficult. Non-standard villains, non-physical villains. How the villain be a ghost? How they're going to deal with that? A ghost or some kind of dimensional projection from the past or the future. There are no limits. The only limit is your imagination, so let it run. Even if this is something that you put down in a notebook and make stats for and then put it away, you've got it. And when your player characters get a little cocky and they've beaten that 15th ninja master in a row and they're starting to collect the masks and put them up on their wall, maybe you pull out a rogue AI that can alter their credit limit. Something different. Someone who can turn the government against them. Someone who makes them wanted. Someone who turns them into criminals for a little while. If they're not already criminals, I'm not going to judge your player characters. I certainly have no room to do that myself. Keep your villains interesting. Keep your bosses interesting. And everything else kind of flows. That's how you get that reputation to be a legend, when there's a different kind of threat and a different solution that everyone's going to have to find. Well, thank you for following me on this little bit of advice giving. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you would like to see these, or if you have any suggestions for me or have your own experiences with your unique villains, throw me a comment. I'd like to read it. I love to get comments. You'll love leaving me one. If you'd like to see these videos as soon as they come out, leave me a subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you haven't, why not? If you do hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification button next to it so you get the notifications as soon as the videos come out. If you really dug the video and would like to support me in some way, feel free to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. Thanks again for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.